welcome. Our next speaker on the stage is phenomenal. I have yet to meet her in person, but we have so many similarities. I am excited about what she's going to share today. I'm excited about getting to know her better. We have so many similarities. So I know the information that she's going to share today is going to be phenomenal, especially for this time in this environment where everything's virtual and we're in a hybrid. Everybody's all focused on how do you navigate your career. This next person is a career management specialist, Erika Spradley. Erika brings 10 years as a leader, an entrepreneur, and a coach whose published content can be found on the Forbes.com, BlackEnterprise.com, Ariana Huffington's Thrive Global platform, because Erika understands the challenges women face while navigating organizational cultures. She's committed to providing principles and strategies that help women self advocate, increase their visibility, go further, faster, and less time, and ultimately stop sitting on their ask. Woo, that's a big one. She also positions women to excel at work as well as know their worth. Cha-ching, cha-ching, cha-ching. That is so important. Mm-hmm. She positions women to know their worth by leveraging interviewing skills to increase their salary. This notion has not only resulted in at least 80% of her clients, securing their desired role, but has also allowed clients to experience mobility by designing their individual path to promotion. Did you get that? Designing their individual path to promotion. As a strategic developer and relator, Erika's transformational coaching involves building a trusting coach client alliance where she offers authentic support to clients along their journey to career success. Welcome to the stage, Erika Spradley. Welcome, Erika.
Thank you so much, Mary. Thank you. I need you to introduce me everywhere I go. That was beautiful. Thank you so much.
I love what you're all about, and this is going to be so exciting. Like I mentioned earlier, I'm excited for you to be a speaker so that I can learn. And when I just been looking at your bio and researching, I'm just like, Mark, like, you need to meet her. Y'all are so much alike. I'm like, okay, why don't we just have her on the stage and have her as a speaker? So I am excited, and thank you for taking the time to share your leadership perspective. I think we need people like you more than ever. As times have changed, we're in a different environment, and people need to know how to navigate success. You can still have success, even though things are uncertain. You can still have it. I like to say you can still have it all. You just have to know how to go about it. So, with that said, Erika, I want to get into one of the first questions that we have for you.
Okay.
So, especially like in this hybrid and virtual environment, post COVID, even though COVID is still there, when I say post COVID, I'm like, since the COVID shutdown, and now we were realizing we have to live with this. Yes. So, people are in a hybrid environment. Some people are all remote. Some people are remote and they come into the office for a few days. Mm-hmm. And a lot of companies are doing interviewing virtually. Yes. So you would think that most people know this, but what I'm realizing that a lot of people may not know how to navigate an interview virtually and online. I always say, for me, we're doing this virtually. That's the best way. That is the best way, because I want them to feel my energy through the computer, and you get to have all your stuff like that, and you can prepare. But what I've realized is a lot of people struggle. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. They don't know the do's and the don'ts of interviewing virtually. So I want you to share some best practices. What are some best practices post-COVID for interviewing? specifically, what are some do's and what are some don'ts, and how can we make sure we knock an interview out of the park if we're doing it virtually?
That's a great question. What immediately comes to mind, Mary, is that whether you're virtually interviewing or not, approach it as if you are in person. There have been individuals and instances that because it is a virtual interviewing scenario and you get to do it from the comfort of your home, then maybe you should be a little more relaxed. Absolutely not. You get one chance to make a first impression, even if it's an internal interview. I would also one of the things to consider is interviewing is a different language, right? So when someone asked me earlier today in a coaching session, how was your weekend? I didn't say I improved efficiency by 15%. I went into, it was a good weekend, right? So I glazed over the details, but in an interview, you are expected to be specific. You are expected to talk about the steps you took to achieve a result if it's a behavioral based interview. So you want to, A, make sure that you are preparing as if it is in person. B, recognize that it is a language that you don't speak daily in most cases, but also along the lines of preparing for the interview, I want you to make sure as a candidate that you understand the value of your market seat. You should know how much that role is worth in the marketplace so that you are talking about a salary that is appropriate for your experience and your expertise. In terms of a few don'ts that come to mind when I think about virtual interviews, it's so interesting. I was preparing for a coaching opportunity, definitely a virtual interview, but they had a video portion as a component of their process. So a question would appear on the screen. I would record myself answering the question, and then I would hit submit. So one of the things that I don't want candidates to do is to assume that because behavioral based interviews are the norm, that that is going to be your process. Confirm what type of interview it is you're having so that you can prepare properly. And also, I would say a don't is don't assume that because you've interviewed well in the past, that you're going to interview well now. Get
Wow.
feedback on your responses if at all possible.
Wow, that is awesome. Could I follow up? I have a couple of follow-up questions for you.
Of course.
One of the things that you say, prepare as if you're in person.
Yes.
So, what does that mean? Because I've in. Could you give us a couple of examples
Sure.
of And I know it seems simple, but you would be surprised at what people are doing. Like, I know that someone did a interview. It was virtual, and they didn't turn the camera on. Maybe something was wrong with their camera. Well,
Yes.
how do you approach that? How do you prepare for that? I would say that's a definitely don't.
Yes.
But
Yes.
but because people are on so many video calls and Zoom calls or whatever, and they have their picture off a lot of times. So some of those things, simple things
Mm-hmm.
that could
Hmm.
impact. Should you
Yes.
dress up? Should you not?
Mhm. So you are spot on, right? Should you dress up? If you had an in person interview, would you be casual? Would you have your pajamas on from the waist down? Anything can happen during the course of that conversation. God forbid, let's say your fire alarm goes off or you need to jump up and excuse yourself and you are dressed appropriately from the waist up, but not the waist down. What impression does that make? You wouldn't do it in person? Then take the extra step and make sure that from a first impression, from a professionalism standpoint, that you don't do that when you are preparing virtually. When I say, prepare as if you were in person, if we had to drive to an interview, we would give ourselves time to get there. We would make sure that we took the necessary precautions before the interview to make sure that we showed up in a way that would say, yes, I'm the best candidate for the position. Just because I'm taking it from home and my commute is across the room doesn't mean that I shouldn't give myself margin for the unexpected. So, those kinds of things you want to take into consideration, even though you are preparing virtually.
So, for example, instead of making sure you're there, you know where you're going, make sure your technology is working. Make sure your camera works. Make sure your link works. Look at test it out.
Yes. And speaking
Yeah.
of which, right, a lot of us have Wi Fi. I recommend that individuals who can afford it get an Ethernet cable. Wi Fi is great until it's unstable. You don't
Mm.
want to run the risk of a technical mishap that could have been avoided just by simply, to your point, Mary, preparing for those things from the technical standpoint. Do a dry run.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's a note for me. Ethernet cable.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mhm.
Because when you're doing that, that's a very powerful point. And I think even when you're working from home or whatever you're doing, this is a good note.
Yeah.
Ethernet cable. So you don't
Yeah.
want to be in the middle of a big presentation or meeting and your Wi-Fi goes out
No.
because it's unstable. Ethernet cable, people. Ethernet cable. I hope you guys picked up what she's dropping down because I'm telling you, this could make a difference because it impacts how you show up.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
that was excellent. So, Erica,
Yes.
now that you've given us some tips
Hmm.
on how to show up well on an interview,
Yes.
let's talk about once we get the job, we
Mm.
got the job in performance feedback for a lot of companies
Yes.
this type of year. This is the type of year they're doing mid-year check-in and people dread them.
Yes.
This how you manage your performance feedback,
Yeah.
especially for women of color, people of
Mm.
color, LGBTQ
Yes.
T community, people with disabilities, managing those microaggressions and the things that we deal with. So,
Yes.
how do you manage performance feedback? Has always been a challenging question that I've received.
Yes.
So, I have a three-part question for you
Three
around
part.
performance
Let me take
feedback.
some notes, Mary. You said three part.
So the first question is,
Hmm.
what advice can you provide to help individuals manage the performance conversation and outcomes? I ask this question because I believe in getting in the driver's seat.
Mm.
You shouldn't be waiting until the end of the year to manage your performance. So, what tips or perspectives or insights can you have or do you have for individuals to help manage their performance conversation throughout the year and at the time of the evaluation?
Well, the first thing I'll say is you have to take 100% responsibility for your career. No one is responsible for managing that other than you. You may get some assistance and some support along the way, but you are responsible for having those feedback conversations just as your leader is. So, to answer your question, I would say make sure that you're getting feedback in this COVID environment, during the pandemic, there's been so much organizational change. Everybody has been busy, but that does not negate the fact that you do not need feedback. You need to know what you're doing well. You need to know what you need to improve upon. If your manager is too busy to have a one on one with you to give you feedback, ask for it. Solicit the feedback that you need for yourself because what you don't want to happen is to get to that mid-year point or to have that annual conversation and there are some surprises. There shouldn't be any surprises at that point. And as long as you are keeping the communication open and asking for feedback, even if it's not, again, scheduled in a cadence as a recurring meeting with your leader, you can get feedback via email in the event that you can't speak with them. But just make sure that you take the initiative to get what it is you need from a performance standpoint.
Wow, that is so powerful because I'm just thinking, especially with COVID, people, some leaders will use that as an excuse
Mhm.
because they don't see you out of sight, out of mind.
Mhm.
So they're not doing the feedback.
Yes.
So, and we have a tendency to just fade away in the background and not ask for it because you're working remote.
Yes,
But what I heard you say is you need to be intentional in soliciting feedback,
absolutely.
especially that since you are remote and you're virtual. You want
Especially.
to be seen. That is so powerful. Um, the second part of that question is how do you get in the driver's seat of managing performance outcomes in conversations? I think that you just said part of it by soliciting
Yes,
feedback. I
yes.
know that is definitely one way of
Hmm.
getting in the driver's seat. Do you have anything else you would like to add?
I do. When you said driver's seat, when you started this part of our conversation, I was like, there's so much to unpack. I know that we have a limited amount of time to have this conversation, but what
Yes.
I will share, you said yes. What I will share, Mary, is, when it comes to getting in the driver's seat of your performance evaluation part of managing your career, make sure that you document what it is you do. And by that, I mean document your performance, document your results, track your accolades and your accomplishments, and follow up with your leader. Bare minimum, do those things monthly. Because again, you don't want to encounter any surprises during your performance evaluation, only for you to feel like, I wish I would have known this sooner. Why didn't I have the opportunity to improve before now? As long as you are documenting, tracking, following up, when you get to that performance evaluation conversation and there is a surprise, you can now say to your leader, right? I followed up with you, or we've been in communication over the last 6 months or over the last 12 months, however long the period has been. And this is a surprise to me. I'm just curious to know why this feedback wasn't shared previously so that I would have the opportunity to improve upon it.
Wow. Document, track, follow up.
Yes.
So many people do not do this. This is why, just to piggyback off of what you were saying, this
Yes.
is a little trick that I used to have because so many people are busy working and just
Yes.
working. But you, especially women, we
Hmm.
don't we find it difficult to
Yes.
give ourselves accolade to recognize when we've accomplished something.
Hmm.
I used to keep an ongoing folder of where if I don't have time to stop and write it, when I accomplish one of my objectives or something significant or influence change in a significant way, I just drop it down. I just drop it in there. And
Hmm.
when I have my one-on-ones,
Yes.
I would go to my folder. Okay, what have I done? It made it easy to talk
Hmm.
about. So just to remind them,
Yes.
verbal conversation, and then I follow up in writing as well. So it's
Hmm.
like leading that conversation. I
Yes.
love that. Document, track, follow up. And there are many ways to do that. That is excellent advice.
Thank you.
So, my last part of this three-part question,
Okay.
more importantly, the tracking and controlling and getting in the driver's seat
Yes.
is really important
Hmm.
to changing, I always say, the landscape of your performance feedback.
Yes.
You're driving and holding people accountable. You're being accountable for yourself, but you're also holding others accountable. But more importantly, this is a question that I know is on a lot of people's mind. And I asked Terry Moore this, no, Mary Hemphill this.
Okay.
We had a conversation about microaggressions.
Mm.
How do you spot microaggressions in performance feedback? And how do you have a skillful conversation about it?
That's a that's a tough one. And what makes it tough, Mary, is that depending on who the individual is, meaning the leader who is offering this feedback, right? It can be indirect, it can be subtle, when you're talking about microaggressions. So, as a rule of thumb, what I would say is if it is offensive and or if it does not align with your performance criteria, seek to understand. And what I mean by seek to understand is ask a follow up question. If someone says, for example, you know what, Mary, you are so articulate in meetings, and you find that to be offensive, and I can look at your face, Mary, you don't see that as a compliment. You're like, Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank you so much.
It's like
What
how were you supposed to be?
right in the
Oh
meeting,
yeah,
right? Yeah.
yeah.
So one of the things that you could say in response to that is, well, thank you so much. I just want to make sure that I can connect the dots and align what you're saying with performance criteria. So when you mentioned that I am articulate in meetings, can you tell me a little bit more about that? I want to specifically align this to performance criteria.
All right. Yeah, because that could go to that. A lot of people have communication or,
Yes.
influence. It could mean that you're influencing the people in the room. I like that. I didn't mean to make a face, but I've heard that comment before. And you can just run wild with your assumptions. So I like the
Yeah.
clarification to see if you are in alignment with
Yes.
what they're saying. That is excellent. And I said I think it was Mary Hinfeld, but it was Terry Moore that I interviewed. And I asked her about the microaggressions, and she
Yeah.
also talked about aligning it to your objectives and your
Yes.
accomplishments and what you're supposed to do, and bringing them back to that conversation. So that was excellent. I think a lot of people deal with the microaggressions and they just leave it on the table. They don't really know how to do with that. But I want to go back to what you spoke on earlier. When
Yes.
you're documenting, you're tracking, and you're getting in the driver's seat of the conversation
Hmm.
from the beginning of the year to the end of the career, you're
Yes.
less likely to have to deal with those types of issues in your performance feedback. So it's
Yes.
really imperative that we all get in the driver's seat and solicit feedback and then document and align to your objectives and ask
That's
for
right.
clarification. That was wonderful.
Thank you,
So
Mary.
we're talking about performance feedback. So you get a good performance. A
Yes.
lot of people do well on their performances, but they're just working, and it is just you need more than just a good performance. We've been taught, a lot of us, especially women, if you work hard, you'll be recognized. But that's not always the case.
No.
So let's talk about visibility. I
Yes.
know you are somewhat of an expert on visibility, so I can't wait to ask this question. And a lot of people struggle with it because we've been so conditioned. If you work hard, you stay here for 30 years, 10 years, 15 years. If you work hard, I know a lot of people, they have good performance reviews
Yes.
and they don't understand why they're not getting where they want to be, where they aspire to be from a
Mm.
leadership perspective. And it probably
Yeah.
comes down to visibility is a lot, has a lot to do with it. So we want to talk about how do we get visibility? Um, how do we get visibility in this environment? How are we seen and heard?
Yes.
And use our visibility to help accelerate and promote us.
Yes.
Can you
It's an
speak on
excellent
that?
question.
Perspective on that?
Of course, Mary, and thank you so much for asking. Unfortunately, you are correct. When you talk about women in the workplace and the challenges with visibility, and even more so in a virtual environment, I talked a lot during the pandemic about the invisible woman syndrome. And before I share a tip that will help around visibility, I want to say that one of the challenges that women have in the workplace is that we haven't unlearned some things that served us well in one season that no
Mm-hmm.
longer serve us. So, for example, in school, you get rewarded, you get recognized for putting your head down and doing the work. It's not always the case in the workplace. So, when you talk about being visible, one of the best things you can do is leverage your relationships. Most of the people that I know, the individuals that I coach, it's never about a performance issue. It's about being invisible. So, when you think about your relationships from a visibility standpoint, who is your mentor? Who is your sponsor? At every level of your career, you should have a mentor, a coach, and a sponsor. Who is mentioning your name in rooms that you cannot yet enter and access? It is so interesting to me to see that during the pandemic, burnout numbers increased for women. So there was this school of thought pre pandemic, and maybe to a degree now, but you don't hear about it as much now. Raise your hand for the stretch assignment. Take on the project that no one else wants.
Mm.
I'm not saying you shouldn't do that, but if you do, make sure that you're honest with yourself about your capacity. Be honest with yourself about the return on your investment and have a conversation with your leader about how this extra work translates to promotion. Because ultimately, you want to make sure that you speak up, that you show up, that you leverage your social capital, those relationships, and care for yourself while you care for the work.
Oh, that is so good. That I got chills when you said that because
Yes.
that is one of the things that I coach on and teach on as well. And what
Yes.
I've learned is that women
Mm.
will just take on the work.
Yes.
We just take on the work thinking we're going to be recognized.
Yes.
And we don't have the conversation about how am I going to be compensated for it.
Mm-hmm.
Men will do it all the time. So we shouldn't be angry at men for speaking up about their worth. What
Yeah.
are we doing to speak up about our worth
That's
and
right.
not make assumption that it's going to automatically come because we're doing extra? We need to be able to have the conversation. So if nothing else, if you're not going to be compensated for it, you could go in with your eyes open and understand what you're taking on and what you are getting out of it or what you're not going to get out of it.
That's
And
right.
it level sets the expectations.
Yes.
That is, I love that whole speak up so that we can show up and leveraging the relationships.
Absolutely.
So, in our previous speaker, Terry Moore,
Yes.
she mentioned she spoke in depth about mentorship and sponsorship and
Yes.
how you go get it and being intentional about it. So, it is all of you guys have spoken on the importance of relationships. Mary
Yes.
Hemphill spoke on that as well about building those relationships. And you're wrapping it up with that relationship piece that
Yes.
is so important to your visibility, the mentor, the sponsorship, and speaking up so that
Hmm.
you can be seen and heard in the right rooms. That
That's
is
right.
so key. So, we can speak up and show up. But what I say is like when you're speaking up, what are you speaking up for? Where are
Mm.
you going with this? Which
Hmm.
leads me to my next question, your
Yes.
vision. I do a whole vision success workshop. So I
Yes.
get asked a lot of these questions. And I'm like, I'm dying to hear somebody else's perspective on this and see where they are. There are many people that do not have a vision for their
Yes.
life or for their career.
Mm.
And that's how they end up in just working a job that's not very fulfilling,
Yes.
or they get stuck, or they have that feeling of stuck because they lack that vision. Talk
Hmm.
about why it is important to create a vision for yourself and how you create a vision when you don't know what you don't know. I know that's a loaded question.
You know what? That is a timely question. It is a divine question. I don't know if you know this about me, Mary, but it literally says on my website, I'm the planner who didn't have a plan. So when you talk
I
about
didn't know.
it, literally says that on my website. So when you talk about having a vision, I now am a person who encourages individuals to write the vision and make it plain. Because when you don't know what you want, when you haven't written a vision, when you don't have a plan, any road will get you there. So I know what it's like to be the person who manages her career from the standpoint of not having a vision. I also now know what it's like to manage my career from the perspective of having a vision. And I can tell you, when you read my bio, when you look at my results, when you look at the amazing things that I have been able to accomplish, it's because I have a vision and because of intention. So if you are someone who was at one point where I was, maybe you want something different and you don't know where to start or what that thing is. My clarity came from what I didn't want. I no longer wanted to work full time and not be able to go to church on Sundays. So I eventually planned my exit. I didn't know when I took that leap of faith that I would end up in a different industry, that I would end up being an entrepreneur, and some of the things that Mary shared when she introduced me today. But I would say your step one, and I'll share three brief steps with you to get you started if you don't know what you want to do next and you don't have a vision, consider what it is you don't want. I no longer want to work 60 hours a week. I no longer want to work for this amount of money. I no longer want to go into the office 5 days a week. I prefer hybrid or remote. Be as specific as possible. And of course, if you know what you do want, capture that as well. The second thing I would recommend is consider those who have had similar career paths as you, who you can speak to about what it is you can do next, what it is they've done, and what it is they're working on. Speak to those individuals you know and or those you may not know. You can schedule informational talks through LinkedIn. Just start reaching out to people. As Mary mentioned in my bio, we don't sit on our ask. The third thing I would recommend is to take some assessments, right? If you're not sure of career path, career options, take some assessments. You can also work with a coach. And if you do not have a recruiter in your network that you can speak to, you need one. That is one person that should be a member of your success squad. You should be able to contact them and reach out with what it is you need assistance with, but you should also be considering yourself as someone who can send them great talent when they need it, because any relationship without reciprocity dies. So you don't want to be the person who's always showing up with an ask without anything to give or being able to reciprocate. So that's where I would start. And those are some of the things that I did do that helped me get to the point of clarity and creating a vision.
Oh, wow. You captured that so eloquently
Mhm.
and so succinctly. It is divine. And I hope that you guys pick up what she's dropping down, because
Yes.
there are so many people who I know I've gotten asked through my clients and through potential
Yes.
clients and other people, like, I don't know what I want. Unlike Erica, I'm a planner. I always had a plan.
Yes.
I always had an exit plan. I
Yes.
didn't know all of the how.
Mm.
That's how I got stuck there so long. But
Yes.
I knew where I wanted to go. As I was starting operating it, it got clear of what
Yes.
I want to do. And as I started moving, I
Hmm.
figured out more of what I don't want.
Yes.
So what you said, Erica, and that's how I became an entrepreneur. Because at first I'm like, well, I could do this for somebody else. But one of the things I didn't want is like, I need to be on my own to do this the way that I want to do
Yes.
it.
Yes.
So that knowing what you don't want
Hmm.
helps you go through that process of elimination.
Yes.
It is so key. And that's why the theme of this summit, I Own the Leader, is about risk manage me.
Mm.
Because when you're a risk manager, my background is risk management. So
Yes.
when you do risk management, it's not that you don't take risks, it's what are you willing to deal with? What
Mm.
is absolutely the thing that cannot happen? And how do you plan for that?
Yes.
Very similar when you're navigating your career. These are the things I don't want. And I need to do whatever I need to do. I don't end up here. These are the things that I do want. How do I make those things happen? What support and processes do I need? Do I need a coach? Do I
Mm.
need a recruiter? All of those things to help me get to where you want to go. And I will tell you, I'm so glad, not just because we're both coaches, but what I realized, I've always believed in having support.
Yes.
I have a coach for almost every aspect of my life or
Yes.
some type of support because I want to be the best me.
Hmm.
And other people can hold me accountable and
Yes.
bring me to that best place that
Mm.
I know I'm divinely created to be.
Yes.
And that's what a coach or support person, support group does for you. They can see your blind spots and come in and do those things that you can't do for yourself or see for yourself. That was, oh, so good, Erica. So tell us, how can our participants find you? Where can they find you? We're going to offer them, you have a free gift, and we're going to put that in the resources that we're going to offer them as well. But how can our participants access you
Thank
and
you
find
so
you?
much. Thank you, Mary. Um, they can access me via my website. That's ericaspradley.com. And feel free to connect with me and or follow me on LinkedIn. You can do a search for my name or Confident Career Woman, and I'll come right up.
All right, Erika Spradley.
Yes.
I hope that you guys got as much out of this as I did. I love learning from other leaders, especially like-minded leaders, because they come in with a slightly different perspective, and it's just like, okay, it just made my light shine brighter. Thank
Yes.
you, Erika, for making my light shine brighter. And I'm hoping that you have made everyone's light shine brighter with sharing this perspective that you have on navigating your career. We're all about owning who we are, owning our success, managing our success, and getting into the driver's seat of our career. Thank you, Erika.
Thank you so much, Mary. I have enjoyed our conversation.